All right, let's talk about one of the most annoying things in fitness, that stubborn belly fat. You feel like you're doing everything right, but that one area just will not budge. Well, if that's you, you are in the right place. We're about to dig into the science that shows why working harder might actually be the problem, and how working smarter is the real solution. So, does this whole scene sound familiar? You're hitting your workouts, you're being super careful with what you eat, but the fat around your waist seems to be living on another planet. It's honestly one of the most common frustrations out there, so just know you are definitely not alone in this. And yeah, this is the heart of it, right? A lot of people find they might lose a little weight from their face or their arms, but that belly fat is just hanging on for dear life. It's this crazy paradox that can make you feel like you're doing something wrong, but you're not. The science actually tells a totally different story. So let's dive right in and talk about the belly fat struggle. We really need to get to the bottom of why this one spot is so uniquely stubborn before we can even think about how to fix it. And this is where it gets a little wild. What if all that traditional advice we've been told for years, run for hours, slash your calories, is actually the very thing that's holding you back? Let's take a look at why those old school rules might be the exact reason you're feeling so stuck. Okay, so this brings us to the main event, why old ways backfire. We're about to get into the hormonal science that most of the conventional fitness advice just completely ignores. On the surface, the common advice makes sense, right? Burn more, eat less. But underneath all that, there's a hormonal reality happening. This super intense approach can actually push your body into a constant state of stress, which triggers a very specific and totally counterproductive chemical reaction. And that reaction is all thanks to a hormone called cortisol. You can basically think of it as your body's built-in alarm system. It's a leftover from our caveman days. When your body senses danger and it sees things like starvation or way too much exercise as danger, it just floods your system with cortisol. And one of cortisol's main jobs, to store fat to survive. And this kicks off a really frustrating, vicious cycle. It all starts with something that feels so proactive, right? You cut calories way down, you're overtraining. But your body just sees that as stress. So its stress response kicks in, cortisol levels shoot up, and what's the end result? Your body gets a loud and clear signal to store fat, especially right around your midsection. And here it is. This is the absolute key to the whole puzzle. The fat cells in your belly have way more cortisol receptors than fat cells anywhere else in your body. So when you're stressed out, your abdomen literally becomes a magnet for fat storage. See, this isn't about willpower, it's just biology. Okay, so if the old way is totally broken, what are we supposed to do? Well, that brings us to the new science-backed plan. And this is all about working smarter, not harder. This really calls for a huge shift in how we think about this stuff. Instead of fighting against our bodies, we're going to start working with them. The new goal is to lower stress, balance out our hormones, and basically create an environment where our body feels safe enough to finally let go of that stored fat. Now, this new approach is built on 5 pillars that are all designed to work together. We've got a moderate calorie cut, quality sleep and rest, short and steady exercise, maintaining muscle mass, and finally, flexible dieting. Let's break down what each of those really means. First up, the calorie cut. So instead of some crazy, drastic diet, the science points to a pretty moderate deficit, about 20% below your maintenance calories. And your maintenance level is just the calories you need to stay at your current weight. That 20% cut, it's the sweet spot. It tells your body to burn fat without setting off that big cortisol stress alarm. Second, we have sleep. And listen, this one is completely non-negotiable. Aiming for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep every night is one of the single most powerful things you can do to manage cortisol. When you're sleep deprived, your body's stress response is on high alert, which makes losing fat way, way harder. Seriously, think of sleep as your secret weapon for balancing hormones. Third, let's totally rethink exercise. The goal is not to live in the gym. Instead, this plan is all about balance. Think 3 full-body strength training sessions a week mixed with active recovery days. On those off days, you're just focusing on low-intensity stuff, like getting your steps in. This way, you build strength without constantly jacking up your stress hormones. And that leads us right to pillar 4, why that strength training is so important. You see, muscle is like your body's engine. It burns calories even when you're just sitting around. By keeping that muscle while you lose fat, you protect your metabolism from slowing down. And pillar 5 is flexible dieting. This just means you stop labeling foods as good or bad. Allowing yourself treats in moderation actually reduces the psychological stress that can also lead to cortisol spikes. It makes the whole thing doable for the long haul. Now, I know this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like when you put it into practice? Well, let's check out the personal turnaround of the person who created this plan. It really shows how all these pieces come together to get real results. I mean, this quote says it all, doesn't it? She found that by eating more food than she did on her old restrictive diets, while still staying in that gentle 20% deficit, she finally saw a huge change. It's incredible. That simple shift stopped the cortisol spike and basically gave her body permission to start burning fat again. The difference is just night and day. She moved away from this punishment model of crazy calorie cuts and hours of cardio, and instead, she adopted a balance model, a moderate deficit, 3 effective workouts a week, and a real focus on sleep. And guess what? That's when things finally started to work. And that brings us to the most important part of all of this: how to turn these ideas into your sustainable transformation. Because let's be real, the goal isn't some quick fix. It's about building a lifestyle that gets you lasting results. So here it is. Here's your new toolkit. First, avoid those super deep calorie cuts that send your body into panic mode. Second, make getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep a priority. Third, use short, steady workouts and lift weights to keep your muscle and your metabolism strong. And finally, stay flexible with your diet. This is a framework for life, not a diet prison. When you boil it all down, the most important takeaway is this: real, lasting change comes from focusing on your hormonal health. When you start supporting your body's systems instead of fighting them, the results aren't just better, they come in a way that's healthier and so much less stressful. So we'll just leave you with this one question to think about. In a world that is always telling us to push harder, do more, go faster, what if the key to the change you're looking for isn't actually about more effort, but about finding a better, smarter balance?